it's of my opinion that, and it is kind of known in the institutional investment world secondhand, that the Chinese government is one of Bridgewater's largest investors.
Yep.
In the multiples of billions. And so if you're charging a 2% fee on $6 billion, the Chinese government's paying you $120 million just to turn the lights on that year. And so it's really difficult to get a straight answer out of someone that is so deeply intertwined with, look, at one point in time, we're going to stop calling China a strategic competitor, and we're going to start calling them what they are. They're the enemy. They're the enemy to the West. They're the enemy to our way of life, to our democracy. We've seen how they can snuff out democracy and human rights. They did it in Hong Kong. And so it's difficult to have this conversation with someone that has a China office, that is allowed into PBOC meetings, that knows Chinese leadership and has China's Inc. as one of their biggest investors. How can you get a straight answer out of someone like that? So it's kind of a losing battle. You're never going to get truth out of them.
Well, I mean, somebody who has principles. You know, I think that at a bare minimum, what you just did was challenged him on something that can be replayed and forwarded many times over. I challenge you, Ray Dalio. I think you've been challenged this year. Why don't you step up and have a real conversation with Kyle Bass? I'll just sit in between the two of you and I won't say anything at all. I mean, this is America. Like, why can't we have these conversations?
Agreed. Like, give a straight answer. How much money has the Chinese government ever invested with you? How much do they have invested with you now? And how do you think personally about the squashing of human rights, about the ethnic and cultural genocide that's being committed against not only the Uyghurs, not only the Falun Gong, not only the Mongolians, not all of them, that whether you're a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, they are eradicating religion throughout China because Xi is the religion. We're going back to the Mao days. And he's the greatest genocidal killer in world's history of his own people. He takes Hitler and Stalin to task. So why on earth are we funding the enemy? Why on earth are we getting in bed with the enemy? Is it only for money? Because if it is, that's a really ugly answer.
Well, it's got to be part of the answer, and it needs to. I do think, again, like, why can't this debate happen? Like, why can't Kyle Bass say what he just said and have somebody respond? I mean, there must be a response. There has to be a response. I didn't write a book called Principles. You did, Ray. Like, what are your principles on that? Because really, this is a little bit more. It's tangentially. It's akin to the Federal Reserve. Well, the rules didn't say they couldn't, and the rules didn't say Ray couldn't, but
right.
in principle, like in moral compass terms, or like in American terms, what say you about that?
I've only seen a journalist press him on it once, and I think it was Andrew Ross Sorkin pressed him and said, people say China's invested with you and you manage money for the Chinese government. Do you do it? And I urge you to go watch this CNBC interview where Ray, he stutters a few times and he says, well, I mean, that's crazy. I manage money for lots of governments. I manage money for the US government. He deflected the question. He didn't answer it. And it's almost like, as an analyst on Wall Street, if you're talking about a company, you have to sign the analyst disclosure. My family, my company, we either do have investments in this company or we don't. We're being objective or we're not. And in this case, everyone gives him a pass because he's a billionaire. There's this schism in the world today between the State Department, the Defense Department, the rules-based order in the West, and Wall Street, right? 12% of Wall Street's revenue today comes from China. Chinese IPOs, Chinese M&A. And so you will never, ever see a Wall Street firm decide that it's a good idea to stop the blood flow to China or to sanction Chinese banks, even if they're bad actors, or to think about U.S. national security. I've said before, if U.S. national security is left up to Wall Street, we'll all be speaking Chinese tomorrow. So it's important to think about how that capital flows, and it's now a passive flow. The question is, will the active flows reverse? And I was disheartened recently. when BlackRock's own chief investment strategist, who is Chinese, Wei Li, said, in the midst of the Evergrande disaster, the clampdown on the education stocks and the tech sector in China, with China imploding, she said, China's no longer an emerging economy. It's a developed economy. It's time to triple your Chinese investments. Well, if you look at the Shanghai Composite over the last 10 years, Keith, I know you have this chart somewhere. It's annualized at an annual 3.4% increase. While the S&P, where we have a rule of law, we respect human rights, and we've compounded at an annual 14.5%. And Wei Li at BlackRock is telling us that you're being compensated for the additional Xi Jinping risks and the fact that Chinese companies aren't really audited risk by investing in China, when that's just a bold-faced lie. Look at the numbers, and you can see that the better investment is in the West and not in the East. People just have FOMO with China.
Hey there, Hedgeye Nation, or if you're not part of Hedgeye Nation, thanks for watching Hedgeye on YouTube. If you haven't already,